This is J. Krishnamurti's third public talk at Brockwood Park, 1974.
Shall we continue, in spite of the wind, with what we have been talking about last time we met here? We were saying, I think, that thought, which plays so important a part in our life, thought which has created our culture, whether it's the Eastern or the Western, all the religious structures and beliefs and sects and dogmas are brought about by thought. Our gods, our saviors, our masters, our gurus, if you have any, and I hope you haven't any, are the result of our thought. And without understanding the structure and the nature of thought, we cannot go very deeply into what is the meaning and the significance of life. Thought can project any meaning, any purpose, any goal, but it is still divisive, it is still separative, it breaks up. And if we would understand the deeper significance of life, one has to understand oneself, know oneself, not according to some philosopher or psychologist, ancient or modern, but to know ourselves as we are, not according to somebody else. As we are, without condemning, without judging, without rationalizing, just to observe what we are, neither being discouraged, nor hopeful, neither being depressed, nor encouraged, but to observe. And then one will see how extraordinarily important it is to understand the movement of thought. Because we have to learn from ourselves psychologically. You may learn technological things from another. But psychologically, we have to be our own teachers, our own disciples. Then there is no authority. Then there is no someone to follow or to accept. But in studying oneself, one learns what the meaning of this self-centered activity leads to. And we're going to talk over together this morning not only our daily life, but also what is the meaning of love and death. We're going to be concerned with these three things: what we call living, what we call love, and this question which has bothered, which has created such extraordinary myths and romance and illusion with regard to death. So, in understanding ourselves, our daily life, there are one or two very prominent principles that operate: pleasure, fear, and suffering. Please, as we said the other day, and if we may repeat again, we are learning together. We are thinking together. We are investigating together. Though the speaker sits on a platform little higher than yourself, it is for convenience, not for any sense of authority. And if we are going to share this question of what is the meaning of existence, what are the implications of love, and that strange phenomenon called death, we have to share this thing together. Really share it. Not merely listen to series of words, draw a conclusion, and agree or disagree with the conclusion that you have drawn. So we are sharing. And it's very important, I think, to understand that. We have created this so-called civilization, this culture, together. We have put this social structure, the political entity, the economic state, and all that, we have built it together. The mess that we have made is made by us together in our relationship with either our principles, ideas, persons, and so on. We have built this together, and we have to change that thing together. Therefore, in investigating all this, we are sharing. We're not merely listening to a series of words and ideas, but actually sharing what is being said together. What is being said is nothing with which you can possibly agree or disagree. These are obvious facts. And when we are looking at facts, the facts themselves tell you what to do, not what you tell the facts to do. So, in understanding ourselves, we come upon these three principles: pain, pleasure, fear, and this thing called sorrow. This spreads right through the world. There is suffering right through the world, not only poverty, physical suffering. There is also psychological suffering, the fear and the pursuit of pleasure. Now, to understand this suffering, one has to look at it. You know what suffering is? There is a physical suffering, the pain of a disease, and there is the psychological suffering, the loneliness, the emptiness, the utter meaninglessness of one's own existence and the existence of the world as it is being lived now, and the suffering that's caused by not being loved or loving another, not having that love returned. There are so many different kinds of suffering. And can the mind, your heart, be free of that suffering? Because if one is not free from that suffering, then inevitably all our actions, everything we look at is distorted, perverted, becomes corrupted. So it's very important to find out for ourselves whether it is possible to be totally free from suffering, which doesn't mean that one becomes callous, indifferent, or builds a wall round oneself in isolation. Because when one understands suffering, then out of that suffering comes passion. And passion is necessary. Because without passion, you cannot be together. I do not mean by passion lust. The very word suffering has its meaning, the root meaning of that is passion. And a mind that is constantly suffering, that's constantly is aware of its own fears and its own pursuit of pleasures, is incapable of clear, total action. So it becomes very urgent and important and absolutely necessary whether the mind being the brain, the heart, the whole thing, whether the mind can be free from suffering and yet have that extraordinary sense of vital passion and energy. To find that out, if you're at all serious, and you must be serious when the world is so utterly chaotic, mad, utterly insane, if you're not serious, there's something very wrong. And so one has to find out. This wind is too much, isn't it? One has to find out for oneself, not according to somebody else, not create an ideal out of this suffering, but to find out for oneself whether it is possible for a mind to be entirely free from suffering. That's what we are going to investigate now, together. Each one has his own particular form of suffering. There is not only a personal suffering, but also the collective human suffering. The suffering of people who have not enough food a day, who are uneducated, who have tremendous accidents and are laid up for the rest of their life. The destruction of war, all those people who are maimed, destroyed. And also there is not only that, but also personal suffering. Therefore there is suffering, collective and personal. We are talking about suffering because that's one of our accepted habitual burden. We put up with it. or we idealize it, as the Christians have done, or as the Hindus with their rationalization of karma and all the rest of it. I hope you can hear all this in spite of the wind. Suffering has many causes. Personal loss, of a person whom you think you'll... Oh my God. Personal loss of someone whom you love, the loss of a job, poverty, a mind that is aware of its own emptiness, shallowness, pettiness, the shoddy life that one leads, or many forms of frustrations. And there is the suffering of death. And when you try to find out the cause of suffering, we are talking about psychologically, is that not a waste of energy and time? Please follow this carefully if you are interested in it. Is not the investigation for the cause of suffering is not only a wastage of energy, but it involves time. All analysis involves time. And we think time will cure the suffering. And so, is it necessary to discover for oneself the cause of suffering, or deal with suffering and not with the cause? Because cause implies in itself time. And the constant investigation of the cause through analysis is paralysis of action. Right? I hope you understand this. I suffer for various reasons. What is the cause of that suffering? Because I am perhaps lonely. And then I begin to investigate that loneliness. And in the investigation of that loneliness, I find that I need companionship. Then I will escape from that loneliness and therefore from sorrow. Right? So what have I done? I have gone away from the fact of suffering into a secondary issue. Whereas, if you can look at suffering without escape, without seeking comfort, without rationalizing and investigating the cause, but merely remain with that suffering, without any movement of thought. Because it's the movement of thought that has brought about this suffering. You see this? So, the mind is aware that the investigation of a cause is merely the furthering of thought which has brought about suffering. Therefore, there is no relief from suffering. There is only an illusory form of comfort. Are we sharing this together? Right. So can the mind see the truth, the fact that any form of escape from suffering, psychological suffering, is a wastage of energy and therefore of time, of a pursuit of secondary issues, and therefore no solution to sorrow. Now this is clear. Then can the mind remain with that suffering without a single movement of thought? Which doesn't mean that you control thought. Because when you see the truth that any movement of thought is a withdrawal from suffering, when you see the truth of that, it naturally ends. Right? Then the mind is completely immobile with that suffering, and it has all the energy to go beyond itself. You've got it? Have you understood this? That is, we are not talking of physical pain. They can deal with that without going to a doctor, dentist, whatever it is. Take your pill. We are talking of the psychological anxiety, psychological fears, psychological sense of deprivation, negligence, which bring about a great anxiety. This anxiety creates sorrow. And can the mind, without the interference of thought, come? Current is off. Ça va? Ça va? Ça va maintenant? Can you hear now? Yeah. You have heard a statement that remain with suffering. Don't escape from it. Don't let thought have any place in it. When you hear a statement of that kind, you have already translated it into an idea, haven't you? And so you are pursuing the idea, not the fact. So without formulating a concept, to listen to the fact that any form of escape from psychological suffering continues that suffering. Can the mind hear it and not make a conclusion out of it? Because we have been trained, educated to draw conclusions. The moment we hear something, there is a conclusion. And according to that conclusion and idea, we act. Whereas we're not acting according to the fact. We are acting according to a conclusion that we have drawn from the fact, which is non-real. Right. So can the mind, please, this demands on your part, if you are serious, a great deal of discipline. We are using that word discipline to indicate not suppression, conformity to a pattern, but the discipline means to learn, not to copy. So, hearing this is to learn. Learning is not to form conclusions. Learning is constantly learning. Right. So, with regard to suffering, when the mind remains totally involved in that suffering without any movement of thought, then out of that totality, there is passion. And with regard to the same thing with fear and the pursuit of pleasure. Then we can begin to also inquire, what is love? This is one of the most complex problems, like everything else in life. I'm sure you have ideals about love, what love should be. And in the modern world, love is almost synonymous with sex. So in trying to understand what love is, actually, not what we think we should be or what we like it to be, but to understand and go into it very, very deeply, one wants to find out what is love. We have made such a mess of that word. We become romantic, sentimental. But if you are not caught in words, then we can begin to look what it is. Then we can begin to ask, is it desire? Is it pleasure? Is it something personal or impersonal? Is it something that the mind can understand? Or is it an ideal? Which the churches, religions throughout the world have said love is something totally different, and so on and on and on. I want to find out what it means, what actually it is, not what I would like it to be. So is love something brought about by memory? You understand my question? Is it the product, the result of memory? Memory is experience, knowledge, and therefore the past, a remembrance. Is love a remembrance? Please look at it yourself, not what the speaker is talking about. Use him as a mirror, but break the mirror at the end of after you have understood it. Is it a memory of something that you have enjoyed, something that has given you great pleasure, physical or psychological, intellectual, or whatever you like? Therefore, is love something in the past? And if it is not in the past, then what place has desire with regard to love? Then what place has pleasure with regard to that? All these questions are involved in this. Desire is sensation. As we went into it the other day, desire originates through perception, contact, sensation, desire. And is love desire? I can't answer it for you. One has to go into this for oneself. That is, if you are serious and want to know the full significance of this extraordinary thing called love, one has to go into the question of desire. And what part does desire play or distort love? And is it pleasure? And modern world have made love into pleasure. And also religions have made it into a form of super pleasure. And the pursuit of that pleasure is a remembrance of something that's over. So is love a memory, a picture which the thought has built, from which it derives sensation, sexual or otherwise? Or has love nothing whatsoever to do with all this? And since in the modern world sex has become such an astonishingly important thing, love has become identified with that. Therefore it becomes, all pleasure becomes very personal, very limited, very small. And can the mind, in understanding, in being aware of this whole structure of desire and pleasure, which soon becomes a memory, and what place has memory in with regard to love, or has it no place whatsoever? And therefore, is love a matter of time? I will love you, or I have loved you. And where there is jealousy, can there be love? Where there is ambition, physical, psychological, or a social ambition, can there be love? In understanding all this, going into it by yourself, not casually, not indifferently, but giving your total attention to this, then you will see that love has nothing to do with all this. Then it becomes compassion, passion for all. And we have divided love separate from living and separate from death. You following? It is thought that has divided living, loving, dying. And now, if we have understood, really, as you are sitting there this morning, on a windy morning, really understood, deep within yourself, or learnt, or learning the nature of desire, not to suppress it, not to deny it, not to run away from it, but to look at it, to understand it, to go in, to investigate it, to unravel it. In the unraveling process of that, you will understand fear and pleasure. And also, you will see the meaning of what love is. It is stripped of all sentimentality. Because sentiment can become cruel, like emotionalism. And then you will find out for yourself what that thing that man has talked about endlessly, written volumes about it, what love is. Then we can begin to investigate what death is. You know, this has been one of the problems, probably the greatest problem in human life. Not love, not fear, not relationship, but this question, this mystery, this sense of ending has been the concern from the ancient of days. And here we are trying to investigate what that thing is. Can we investigate what death is when we have have separated it from living. You understand my question? I have separated death as something at the end of my life. Right? Something that I have postponed, put away. A long interval between the living and the dying. Dying is something in the future, something of which one is frightened, something which doesn't want to be totally avoided. But it is always there, either through accident, disease, old age, and so on. It is always there. And whether we are young or old, infirm or full of joy, it is always there. And people have said, living is only a means to dying. Death is much more important than living. And look to death rather than to life. And knowing that there is death, people have invented every form of comfort. Comfort in beliefs, in ideas, in hopes, that you will sit next to God when you behave properly at the right hand of that entity. And so on and on and on and on. The whole of Asia believes in reincarnation. And you have here not such a rationalized, but a sentimental hope. When you look at all this, the beliefs, the comforts, the desire for comfort, knowing that there is an ending, and there is a hope that next life you will continue. And also there is the whole intellectual rationalization of death. When you look at all this, one sees that one has separated dying from living. Right? I hope we are following all this together. Dying something from living. The living, the everyday living, with all the conflicts, the miseries, the attachments, the despairs, the anxieties, the violence, the suffering, the tears and the laughter. All that, something totally separate from the dying. Why has the mind separated life from dying? You've understood my question? Which we have done. Why? Is life that we lead, the everyday life, the shoddiness of it, the bitterness of it, the emptiness of it, the travail, the routine, the office, year in and year out for 50 years and more, going to the factory, all that we call living. The strife, the struggle, the ambition, the corruption, the fleeting affections and joys and pleasures. That's what we call living. And we say death mustn't enter into that field. Because that's all we know. And death we do not know. Therefore keep it away. So we cling, oh this wind. So we cling to the known. Please watch it in yourself. To the known. To the remembrance of things past, to the sorrows, to the anxieties, to memories, to experiences, which are all the known and therefore the past. We cling to the past. And that's what we call the known. And the unknown is death, of which you are frightened. So there is a wide gulf between the known and the unknown. And we rather cling to the known than enter into the field of the unknown. Because our minds operate always within the known. Because there is security. We think there is security. We think there is certainty. We think there is permanency. And when you look at it, it is neither impermanent, but it is not. It is impermanent. It is totally uncertain. But yet we cling to it, because that's all we know. That is, we only know the past. And death is something we do not know. Now this division exists. And it exists because thought has divided life as living, dying, love, all the rest of it. The artist, the businessman, the socialist, the politician, thought has divided. So thought has divided life into the known and death as something unknown. These are all facts. Now, can the mind, which clings to the known, inquire into what is permanent? You understand? Because that is what we think we are clinging to, the permanent relationship between you and another, the permanent ownership of land, property, money, name, form, idea. Now, is there anything permanent? Not as an idea, but an actuality. You understand? Please work at it. Is there anything permanent? My name, my reputation, my house, my wife, my children, my ideals, my experience. And yet the mind wants permanency, because in that there is security. So, realizing there is nothing permanent here, nothing, it creates a permanency in God, in an idea. And you find how extraordinarily difficult for human beings to change ideas. And that's our battle now, between you and the speaker. Because you have ideals or ideas or pictures, images, which you think are permanent. And you have accepted that permanency as real. And here it comes along somebody who says, look, there is nothing permanent. Your ideas, your gods, your saviors, you yourself are impermanent. And you refuse to see that. And to realize that there is impermanency, uncertainty, creates havoc in one's life. The more uncertainty you are, more neurotic you become. The more imbalanced, insane the world, your activities become. So you must have something permanent. And so you create a belief, a God, an ideal, a conclusion, an image. As we said, these are all illusions, because there is nothing permanent. But yet, unless the mind has something basically permanent, all its activities will be distorted, neurotic, incomplete. Therefore, is there something totally permanent? You're following all this? For God's sake, follow it. It's your life. If there is nothing permanent, then life becomes totally meaningless. So, is there something permanent in the sense, not as a house, as an idea, but something that is beyond and above this impermanency? We are investigating that. You have to follow this a little bit carefully, otherwise you will miss it. As we said, we live in the past. And the past has become our permanent, a state of permanency. And when you observe and see the illusion of the past, what is it? What comes out of that perception? You understand? I see that living in the past has certain value, because I can't ride a bicycle, I can't talk English, or drive a car, or do certain technological things, or recognize you and my friend, a wife, children. So there must be the knowledge of the past. But is there a quality of mind that's not put together by thought, which is in itself is impermanent, is there a quality out of this perception? That quality is intelligence. That intelligence is not yours or mine. It is intelligence. The intelligence that is capable of seeing the impermanent and not going off into neurotic habits or activity, but because there is intelligence, is always acting rightly. You got it? So, with that intelligence, we're now going to look at death. Death is something, we say, the unknown. Being attached to all the things that we know, what we are frightened of is complete ending of that attachment. Attachment to my name, attachment to my family, to my job, to the book I've written, to the book I hope to write, or to the picture, God knows what else. Various forms of attachment. Death is the ending of that attachment. Right? Now, living daily, can you be free of attachment? Therefore, inviting death. You understand what I'm talking about? You've understood? Am I making myself clear? That is, I am attached to my book, to my reputation, to my family, to my job, to my pride, to my vanity, to my sense of honesty. You follow? To my sense of glory, of whatever it is I'm attached to. And death means the ending of that attachment. Now, can I end that attachment immediately, which is death? So I have brought death into the very moment of living. You understand this? So there is no fear. Therefore, when the mind sees the truth of this, that death is an ending of the things that you are attached to, whether it's the furniture, to your face, or whatever it is you are attached to the ideals and so on, you have brought this faraway thing called death to the immediate action of life, which is the ending of your attachment. So, death means a total renewal. You understand? A total renewal of a mind that has been caught in the past. So the mind becomes astonishingly alive. It is not living in the past. But then a problem arises. If the mind is incapable of this action, and it is tremendous action, to end completely, every day, to all the thing that was attached. Every day and every minute, you are living with life and death together. You understand? From this arises the problem. If you cannot do it, what will happen? You understand? My son can't do this. Oh, my friend, my brother can't do this. You have done it and I can't do it. You have applied, you are diligent, you are attentive, you have got this, you have understood this thing basically, radically. That you are not dependent anymore on anything. Ending all that dependency, attachment, immediately, that is death. Then what happens to those who do not enter into that intelligent, supreme excellency of action? You know, most people live in the past, live thoughtlessly, live without sanity. What happens to all those people? You understand my question? You have stepped out of that stream of life, which means you are compassionate, you know what you are doing, aware of all the significance of the past, the present, and the future, all that's involved. And I am not. I don't even listen to you. I don't even care. I just want to have a good time. I want to enjoy myself that's all my concern. I may be afraid of death, and I have a comforting belief that I will born next life or that I will end up in heaven. So what happens to me? You understand my question? What is your relationship to me? You who have understood all this, therefore compassionate, and your actions are supremely intelligent and therefore excellent. And I am not interested in what you are saying, doing, writing, thinking. I am caught in this stream, which most human beings are. You understand? Very few step out of that stream. And what is your relationship to the man in that stream? Have you any relationship? Or none at all? You understand? How can you have any relationship with the insane when you are sane? You can be compassionate, you can be kind, generous, and all the rest of it, but you have no relationship. Therefore, what can you do? Arises the problem of your responsibility then is, if you are out of that stream, to live that life and not be an example. If you are an example, then you become a dead person. Then you have a following. Then you become the authority. Then you are the very essence of destruction. You are the very cause of that stream. You understand? Then what will you do? You have a responsibility. responsibility to act intelligently. Because you have seen the whole issue. Therefore, the perception of that, of the map of this whole thing that we have talked about, brings that intelligence. According to that intelligence you will act, not I like or I don't like. That is the responsibility. And if you say, is there for me who are still caught in that stream a future life? You understand? You know, thought creates the future. As thought created the past, and from the past, through the present, modified becomes the future. Right? So the man who is still thinking in terms of the excellency of thought will have a future. I don't know if you follow all this. But the man to whom thought has, to the man whom thought means time, thought means matter, thought means memory, experience, knowledge, which is the past, to such a man, obviously, thought and its structure becomes all important. And he's caught in that. Therefore, he lives in the past and the future, which is not the time to go into now, because that's a very complex problem to go into. What happens to a mind that's caught in this? Is that an individual mind or a collective mind? Is it a consciousness which is separate, unique, indivisible, which means individuality, or is that consciousness collective? Therefore, there is no individuality at all. You follow all this? The moment it is collective, it's not individual. And most people are the collection of all. Look at your own mind and you will see it. You are an Englishman or a German or a Hindu, whatever it is. And you are the result of that culture, of that economic condition, the climate, the food you eat, and all that. You are the result of all that. So you are, as a collective human being, you will follow the collective. But the moment you step out of that stream, you are not collective or individual, you are intelligent. You understand? I finished. Do you want to ask any questions about all this? What's up? So, when you look at yourself, are you an individual? You know what that word means? It means indivisible, whole, not fragmented. Whole means sane, healthy, and also it means holy. Are you that as an individual? Are you an individual or collective? Be terribly honest about it. And you will see how you are the collective. The traditions, all the rest of it. And to be an individual means to be whole, not fragmented. Think one thing, say another, do something contrary. You follow? All this contradiction in oneself is the collective. Because the collective, the mass, the whole of human beings are caught in this everlasting battle within oneself and therefore outward battle. And the individual is one who is totally out of that. Is then no longer an individual. Of course. That's what I said, sir. The gentleman says one suffers. And you hear this statement that you must watch suffering. So you have made that statement into a conclusion and you are watching the conclusion. You follow, sir? Not watching the fact. Now just look. I suffer because my son is dead, or my mother, wife, whatever. My son is dead and I feel lonely. I've invested everything in him. I have made him a continuity of myself. And he comes to an end. And I suffer. In that suffering there's self-pity and a sense of loss, a sense of life has no meaning and all the rest of it. I suffer. Not to escape from that suffering, just to live with that suffering, you understand, sir? Which is not morbid. I don't know if you're following on. To live with it, not to escape from it, not to transcend it, not to suppress it, not to translate it into something other than what it is. When the mind does that, then you have all the energy which has been dissipated in trying to go beyond it, escape, and so on. You have all that energy, all that attention, which is energy, in the observation of that suffering. In that observation, the observer is the observed. This is important, otherwise you separate it again and there is conflict. So, in that observation, there is no observer, only that fact. Then you have the energy to go beyond it. Admit it. That's the abandonment of what? Is that what you are saying, sir? Abandonment also one's responsibility? Is that what you're saying?
If you abandon your attachment, doesn't it mean that you've abandoned
Yeah.
your responsibility?
When you abandon attachment, are you not also abandoning responsibility? When you abandon attachment, do you lose responsibility or you become much more responsible? Please follow this. I am attached to my son, my poor son, who is dead, older, but now I'm attached to him. I'm attached to my son. What am I attached to? The image of my son? What I would like my son to be? Or am I attached to the person? Which is it? Both the person as well as the image. If I am attached to the image which I have built about my son, that he must be this, he must be that, he must be a great politician or a great musician or a great writer or whatever it is, or marry very well and a lot of house and money, property. Now if I abandon my attachment to the image I have built about him, have I lost responsibility? On the contrary, I feel much more responsible to him. Responsibility being respond rightly to the person, not to the image I have about that person. So, you see, we are really, when we are attached to the image, we are really irresponsible. You say, when I am attached, please listen, attached to my idea of my nationality, that I am an Englishman, a Frenchman, then I am irresponsible to man. I am irresponsible to the rest of the world. And we have made this irresponsibility into a highly respected thing. And we need cooperation to bring about the daily human problems, and which we are unwilling to do because you are an Englishman, you are a Frenchman, and somebody else. You understand? Therefore, attachment to the idea is irresponsibility. If we are not to be an example or teachers, how can that intelligence grow, spread? Be first intelligent. You understand, sir? Don't bother about that intelligence being spread abroad, but be committed seriously to the awakening of that intelligence. And then that intelligence will tell you what to do. You may go out and talk about it, right? Give up your life to it. You understand? You will be totally committed then. Right? Is that enough?